The day my own report was ripped from the conference table, I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The boardroom doors slammed shut, the senior partners smirked, and the CEO turned to me with a cold, corporate grin. "You're a zealot, Maya, stick to the numbers, we can sell." In that instant, the world I'd built, science, purpose, a future for the city's poisoned streets, collapsed into a single, crushing dismissal. It wasn't just my career that was being trashed. It was my very right to speak. The sting of that rejection seeped into every corner of my life. My mother's kitchen table, once a place of warm encouragement, now echoed with her sighs. "Why waste your talent on something that will never pay the bills?" My brother laughed, calling my obsession with fungus-fancy a circus act. Even the other researchers in the NGO whispered, "She's chasing a fairy tale." They called my dream impractical, eccentric, a distraction from real work. Instead of crumbling, I packed a battered field journal, a handful of spore cultures, and a worn-out backpack. I left the city's polished towers behind and stepped onto cracked sidewalks where trash spewed like a wound. My new laboratory, an abandoned lot overgrown with weeds, its soil blackened by decades of oil and heavy metals. I set up a modest pilot, inoculation beds of Pleurotus and Phanerochaete that would feast on the pollutants, turning the dead ground into a living tapestry. The first weeks were brutal. Rain washed away my seedlings, rats dug at my trays, and the city council threatened to shut me down for unauthorized bio-experiments. Yet each night, after a hard day of digging and monitoring, I'd stare at the thin white threads spreading through the muck and feel a quiet, stubborn fire flare inside me. The world mocked me, but the fungi didn't. They grew relentless, turning sludge into nutrient-rich soil in weeks that had once taken centuries. Within a year, a barren alley transformed into a green corridor buzzing with birds, bees, and curious children. My work began to appear in scientific journals, and soon the very skeptics who once ridiculed me started knocking on my door, asking for samples, for partnerships, for guidance. The same corporate allies who buried my report now sent polite emails titled "Collaboration Opportunity." I had turned their dismissal into a catalyst, proving that nature's hidden power could reclaim what we thought was lost forever. When the first city park I regenerated was inaugurated, a once toxic lot now brimming with native trees, clean water fountains, and a mural of mycelial networks, I received an unexpected invitation. "Maya, can you come home for dinner?" My mother wrote, her tone tentative, as if she were unsure whether I would even accept. My family, my parents, my brother, the same cousins who once rolled their eyes at my weird pursuits, were gathering in the old house that smelled of stale coffee and old photographs. I arrived with a sleek portable case of my latest breakthrough, a self-sustaining biofilter that could clean a small stream in minutes. I walked into the living room, and the silence was heavy enough to be felt. My mother's hands trembled as she set down a pitcher of water. My brother stared at the case, his eyes widening. "Is that what you've been working on?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. I opened the case and placed a small vial of water onto a table. Within seconds, the liquid turned crystal clear, the metallic taste gone. I turned to them, and in that moment the room seemed to pulse with the weight of every scornful comment, every laugh, every dismissal. "Do you remember the day you told me I was an embarrassment?" I asked, my voice steady, the same urgent cadence that had carried me through countless boardroom defeats. My mother's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of awe. "We thought you were chasing fireflies," she whispered. My brother, who once called my ambition a circus act, now stared at the thriving park visible through the window, a park where children played under trees that had once been dead, where birds sang over a creek that used to run black. The room erupted, not in applause, but in a sudden, raw realization. My father, who had once rolled his eyes at my impractical dreams, stood and walked to the window, looking out at the green expanse I had coaxed back to life. He placed a weathered hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "We were blind. We thought we were protecting you, but we were burying you." Their remorse wasn't just a fleeting apology. It was a mirror held up to every moment they dismissed my purpose. Their regret rippled through the conversation, turning the previously hostile atmosphere into one of reverence. They asked endless questions about my work, about the science, about the future of urban regeneration. I answered calmly, knowing that my journey had never been about vindication for its own sake, but about proving that a single stubborn belief, coupled with relentless effort, could rewrite an entire narrative. Walking back to my car after the dinner, I glanced at the city's skyline, now dotted with green roofs and mycelial patches that turned pollutants into fertile ground. The world had once told me I was a zealot, an embarrassment, a dreamer who'd fail. Those words now felt like ash scattered by an unexpected wind. The lesson I carry forward is simple yet profound. When the world tries to silence your truth, let that very attempt become the catalyst for your rise. My family learned that mockery is a fragile shield, one that cracks when confronted with undeniable proof. Their regret became my quiet triumph, not because I needed their approval, but because their change affirmed that perseverance can reshape even the deepest roots of prejudice. In the end, I returned home not as the scorned child who left with a backpack full of spore cultures, but as a steward of a new ecosystem, one that thrives on resilience, forgiveness, and the unyielding belief that even the most dismissed dream can, in time, reclaim the world. And as I drive away, the city's skyline glows with the soft green of regeneration, a reminder that every ridiculous idea, nurtured with patience and grit, can blossom into a future we all once thought impossible.